Alright guys, we're back with essentially what is the introduction to factorization. Now, let's take a look at this question here. It says, what is the highest common factor of the two terms below? Now, this term here is 4p, and of course, the factors of 4p, again, when you have a term with a letter, with a number and a letter there, you start with the numbers. Of course, the first factor is always 1, and then 2 and 4. So we start with a number. So all of these numbers here will be factors of 4p, which means these numbers will be able to go into 4p without leaving a remainder. 1 into 4p, 4p times. 2 can go into 4p, 2p times. And 4 can go into 4p, p times. And of course, then you start with the letter p there. So of course, p will be able to go into 4p 4 times. And of course, remember, p is the same as 1p. And then 2p can also go into 4p 2 times. And 4p can go into p 1 time. So if you can look and see what is happening here, because we start with the numbers 1, 2, 4, and then the letter, and essentially it's 1p, 2p, 4p as well. So this gives us an idea what is to come in terms of the letters and the numbers in front of the letters. All right. So for 8, we have factors 1, 2, 4, and 8. So those would be essentially the factors of 8. So the question asks, what is the highest common factor of the two terms? Now, 1 and 1 here are both factors of the two terms, so too are 2 and 2, but those would not be the highest factor. It's asking for the highest common factor of the two terms. So that title would go to the 4 here. So that would be the highest common factor. And the reason why I've done this is to emphasize what you must do when you factorize. Now, here's going to be the first example of simple factorization, and this is going to come back. So remember, the highest common factor of 4p and 8 would be 4. Now, let's take a look at this question here. Now, it says factorize completely 4p plus 8. And essentially, what this is all about is determining the highest common factor of these two terms. Now, before I get into working out this question formally, let's just look at the situation here. So, the question was to factorize completely. This is a very important word in the question. Completely, factorize completely 4p plus 8. Now, in an examination, we had 2 students. So student 1 factorized 4p plus 8 and got this as the answer. So he said what is common in the two terms would be 2. So I put the 2 outside the bracket and said 2 times what gives me back 4p, that would be 2p. And 2 times what gives me 8, that would be 4. Now student 1 has factorized, right? But another student did this as well. So student number 2 did this, all right? So he's looking at 4p plus 8 and say, well, what is common in the 2 would be 4. So 4 outside the bracket, and 4 times what gives you back 4p, that would be p here. And 4 times what gives me positive 8, that would be plus 2. Now, both students have factorized, but only one student would have factorized completely. And that means when you factorize completely, you're taking out the highest common factor. Now, if you look here, obviously 2 would be a factor of both the terms. 2 would be the factor of both the terms here, right? And 4 is also a factor of both 4p and 8, as we found here. Now, my question is, who has factorized completely? Meaning, when you look inside the bracket, you should not see anything that is common inside the bracket. And if you look closely at 2p and positive 4p, 2 can still come out of this. Now, when you look inside here, 4 came out, and there's nothing else common inside here. Can't take anything else out of that, right? So, if you were asked to factorize this expression completely, this student would have gotten it incorrect. because he did not take out the highest common factor of the two terms. 2 isn't the highest common factor. The highest common factor, in fact, is 4, and student 2 would have factorized completely because there's nothing else common inside of the bracket. We could have still taken 2 out here, so this is not what we want. To factorize completely means taking out the highest common factor of the two terms in question here, 4p and positive 8, and that would be 4. When you look inside the bracket, you realize that there's nothing further. So in other words, to factorize 4p plus 8 completely, to factorize 4p plus 8 completely, you're looking for the highest common factor that can come out of both terms, and that would be 4. So when we factorize completely, the answer would have been equal, open bracket, and then to figure out what's in the bracket, you just ask yourself, 4 times what gives me back 4p, that would be p, and 4 times what give me back positive 8, and that would be positive 2. And this would have been the correct answer in terms of factorizing completely. Now, this is simple factorization, and it's normally one step, which means 1 mark. So what I've just done was to factorize 4p plus 8 completely. Now, the reason why I said that factorization is the reverse or opposite of expansion is that after I factorize the expression 4p plus 8 and got this as a final answer, to check in your head if your final answer is correct, then you do the expansion in your head. So 4 times p gives me back 4p, and 4 times positive 2 gives me back positive 8, which is why we said that factorization is the reverse of expansion. So moving from here to here is factorization, and then moving from here to here would have been the expansion. And that is why I said factorization is the reverse or opposite of expansion. And I want you guys to be clear on that. All right, let's take a look at a second example, and then I can give you some questions to try. Let's take a look at this. Okay, now when you have a question like this, you're seeing it's a little bit different from example 1 because this didn't have any letter in it. All right, so this was very straightforward. All you had to do was to focus on which number is the highest common factor. Now when you have two terms here that have letters and numbers, then you have to consider the letter first and the number, which is also very simple, one-step solution. So look at the 5 and the 20. What will be the highest common factor of 5 and 20? And that would be 5. When you look at mn and n, what will be the highest common factor of mn and n? That simply would be n. And if you were to punch out all of the factors of 5mn and punch out all of the factors of 20n, then you'd realize that the highest common factor would be 5n. Now all we need to do is figure out what comes inside the bracket. So you know how you do that is very simple. Ask yourself, what times 5n gives me back 5mn? And that would simply be m, because 5n times m would give me back 5mn. And the next question to finish the problem would be, what times 5n would give me negative 20n? And that simply would be negative 4. And that would be your final answer. And again, you can always check in your head by doing the reverse, which is expansion, to see if I expanded this, if I would get back the original expression. All right, and that is factorization. All right, guys. Now I'm going to ask you to try these questions on your own, one-step solutions, and the exercise says factorize completely each of these 4 problems. Let me see how you do, and I'll see you guys soon.